Hi everyone, my name is Tamid Saleh and welcome to this bonus video, as I promised you, in preview of the Montreal Open Masters 1000, which is kickstarting next week. As I said in my Tennis Tuesdays video, that I'm going to be releasing added content for this tournament and also the other big tournaments in tennis, like the Masters, the World Tour Finals, and of course the Grand Slams. If you haven't already, please do subscribe to my channel. I release weekly tennis videos as well as, videos from other sports as well. My latest tennis video was if Nick Kyrgios is good or bad for tennis. I'll put a link up here somewhere and also in the description below. But yeah, this video is like a little bonus one. It's not part of any series, but it's looking forward to the Montreal Open. So without further ado, let's roll the intro.
Here he is again. That's astonishing. It's absolutely world.
The tennis season is back, and am I excited for this or what? I'm sure you all are as well, even though it's only been about 2 weeks since that epic Wimbledon final between Novak Djokovic and Roger Federer. Yeah, I can't wait for this, and the US swing is up and running now. We've got the Montreal Open next week, followed by the Cincinnati Masters, and then of course the US Open to cap things off. I'll start with giving you guys a fun fact. Did you know that the Montreal Open was established in 1881, guys? It is one of the longest serving tournaments. The only tournaments that have been going on for longer is Wimbledon and the US Open. And then it's Montreal Open. So it's got a rich history. It's the longest established Masters. And yeah, I can't wait. For me, it's a lovely tournament. We don't get Montreal every year, of course, as the Canadian Open is shared between Montreal and Toronto. Toronto takes all the even years, with Montreal taking all the odd years. There is also $5.7 million in terms of prize money being given out. So it just shows you the scale of this tournament. And yeah, this tournament for me is very important in terms of Rafael Nadal getting that very important second seeding for the US Open, and I'm going to explain why to you in a little bit. First, I just want to focus on the tournament itself. So of course it starts next week. The big players are in it. However, we have two legends that won't be taking part in it. Of course, Roger Federer and Novak Djokovic are not taking part in Montreal. This is what they had to say. So Djokovic, he pulled out. He said that he wants to give his body longer rest and recovery time after the Wimbledon final, of course. For me, this is completely understandable. He doesn't want to burn out for the Grand Slams. He said many times that the Grand Slams are his priority. And if he was going to play either Montreal or Cincinnati, it makes sense for him to play in Cincinnati. It gives him that extra bit of rest after the Wimbledon. And also, if he wins Cincinnati this year, last year he won it for the first time, which capped off the Golden Masters, the first time in history that one person has won every single Masters available, all 9 of them. And yeah, if he wins it this year, he'll be the first person to win every Masters twice. So there's added incentive to winning Cincinnati, as yeah, he'll get the double Golden Masters 1000. So for me, it makes sense for him to play in Cincinnati. Roger Federer, of course, pulled out slightly earlier than Novak as well. And he's confirmed that he will play Cincinnati. Once again, for me, completely makes sense. The faster courts of Cincinnati suits Roger's game more. And he's had way more success in Cincinnati. But yeah, I don't want to focus on Cincinnati too much this week. We will, of course, focus on that next week. But yeah, so those two players won't be playing. Of course, Del Potro's not playing as well, as he's still recovering from injury. Let's hope he comes back soon, guys, because Del Potro, one of the nicest guys and also one of my favorite tennis players. So I wish him a speedy recovery. Looking at the players who are playing, we've got Rafael Nadal, world number 2 and defending champion, playing, of course. The rest of the field, we have some top stars in there. There's Dominic Thiem, Alexander Zverev, Fognini, Tsitsipas, Nishikori, Khachanov, Medvedev. So big stars there. And of course, we have the Canadian trio, the big players from Canada. We've got Milos Raonic, who was a finalist here in 2013. He lost that final to Rafa Nadal. Then we have Felix Auger-Aliassime. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that, so I'll call him FAA. For me personally, I'm a massive fan of Felix. I've said this before in my past videos. I believe that after the big three are, have retired and moved on, this guy will be the next big champion. Yeah, big fan of Felix. Let's see how he gets along. And then we have Shapovalov. For me, I expected more from him, I'll be honest with you. He, of course, reached the semi-finals a couple of years ago in Montreal. He was the youngest ever Masters 1000 semi-finalist when he did it a couple of years ago. And he beat Rafa Nadal en route to that as well. So, yeah, those are the main three big hopes for Canada. The field looks really strong, even though we don't have Novak and Federer playing. Yeah, great field, great history this tournament has. Massive fan of Canada, massive fan of Montreal and Toronto for that matter. And yeah, amazing prize money on offer as well. Last year's final was won by no other than Mr. Rafa Nadal. He's won this title 4 times. So it's one of his most successful tournaments outside of clay. So for me, a big favourite. But yeah, he won it last year in straight sets against Tsitsipas. The most times anyone's won the Montreal Open is 6 times. So Rafa is 2 away. That was achieved by Ivan Lendl. And the oldest player to win it is, of course, Rafa Nadal, who won it last year. Can he extend that record by a year this year? I believe so. And I think it's very important, this tournament, to him as well. This year we've had 5 champions. So from the 5 Masters 1000s, we've had Indian Wells, Miami, Monte Carlo, Madrid and Rome. 5 different champions. So we've had Thiem, Federer, Fognini, Djokovic and Nadal winning them. Are we going to have a 6th different one? If you're looking at it, the most likely probably would be Alexander Zverev or Tsitsipas perhaps. For me, I feel like Rafa must win this, and now I'm going to go into it. Why? So first we'll look at the permutations for the seedings of the US Open. It is based on rankings, and looking at the rankings live right now, Djokovic is guaranteed to get top seed. He's already on 12,000. Well, he has 12,415. He's not going to be caught up. Federer and Nadal, they're very close when you look at it. So Nadal currently has 7,945 ranking points, with Federer on 7,460. The difference there is about 500. However, once the points that they're defending from last season drop off, so what Rafa is defending is 1,000 points in Montreal, because he was the defending champion last year, of course. And Federer is defending 600 points from being runner-up in Cincinnati last year. So from these 2 tournaments, if you take away the 1,000 from Rafa and the 600 from Roger, they're left on Rafa still slightly ahead. He's on 6,945 and Roger is on 6,860. So less than 100 difference there. This is why, for me, Rafa will take this very seriously, and a win here in Montreal guarantees him the 2nd seeding in the US Open, as he will have more than 1,000 points lead with Roger. He won't be able to catch up by, even if he wins Cincinnati. Even if Rafa comes runner-up, for instance, if Roger wins Cincinnati, he overtakes him, which is why if he wants to guarantee it now without even having to play Cincinnati, then Rafa must win Montreal. Of course, Rafa, he could play Cincinnati as well, but for me, I feel like if he wins Montreal, he'll take a break in Cincinnati, because he'd want to give his body that extra time. His main rivals, Novak Djokovic and Roger Federer, they're only playing one of these 2, so it'd be good for him to play one as well, as he doesn't want to get he doesn't want to burn out, and hard courts are known to be the most physically taxing in terms of Rafa's body. So yeah, that is why it is crucial for him to get the job done in Montreal, become a 5-time champion there, and that way he doesn't need to play Cincinnati. Why it is so important getting that number 2 seeding, I'll explain to you. Of course, you've got Djokovic as number 1 seed. You'll either get Federer or Nadal as number 2, and then you've got a number 3 seed, as we've had in the Wimbledon and French Open already this year. Rafa and Roger have been on the same half of the draw, which means they face each other in the semi-finals. It's better to get the number 2 seeding, because then whoever's number 3, if they're in Novak Djokovic's half, then it only means that the big 3, that number 2 seed, will only have to face one other of the big 3. Whereas if you get the number 3 seeding, then if all plays out how it is, you're going to have to at least defeat 2 of the other big 3 to win the US Open. This was of course shown by Roger and Rafa, where Roger, even though he beat Nadal, he then had to face Djokovic, and then he couldn't beat Novak. I know it was very close, but it just shows you how hard it is, which is why for me it's so important to be on the half where the other 2 members of the big 3 are on the separate half. It's not, of course, just the ATP rankings on the line. The ATP race, which is obviously every season it restarts. Novak Djokovic currently leads it, but not as much as you may think by. He has 6,725 points this year, exactly 500 ahead of Rafa on 6,225. And then we've got Roger on 5,060 as well. So if Nadal wins Montreal, then he takes that number 1 spot in the ATP race as well. Of course, a runners-up in Montreal also takes him to number 1 in the race. But this really would put added pressure on Novak. Of course, whoever wins the US Open is going to get that massive 2,000 points boost, which will increase their chances. However, you can't say that these Masters, to just take it easy on them. As you have seen, Djokovic has won 2 Grand Slams with Rafa winning 1. However, the difference is not 2,000, it's only 500. So the points accumulated in these Masters are very important as well. Novak Djokovic is, of course, going for the year-end number 1 for the record-tying 6th time. He's currently tied with Roger at 5. And, of course, the big one he's going for is the longest number of weeks spent at world number 1. He's about a year away from that, and I believe he'd want to do that without, having a break where he falls down to number 2 and then having to come back up to number 1. This is why the race is very close, very important for all of them, as Djokovic is chasing history, and he needs to. He's 500 ahead, but for me, this is why the Cincinnati, the Montreal, and then of course you've got Paris and Shanghai coming up as well, and of course the US Open. The race is really hotting up now. Nadal and Djokovic have already qualified for the World Tour Finals. Roger, I believe, will do so very soon as well, probably in Cincinnati. And that's the situation of the ATP race. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Who do you think is going to win Montreal? You've seen the field, you've seen who's playing, you've seen who's not playing. Can Rafa win his 5th Montreal Open, and in doing so pretty much cement that number 2 seeding for the US Open? I personally think Rafa will win Montreal. I feel like there's too much importance on this for him to relax or anything like that. He will bring his A game. Rafa always brings his A game anyway. And I am so happy that tennis is back, guys. With Montreal and Cincinnati and the US Open coming up, this is peak times for American tennis. I'm just really happy. For me personally, Montreal is one of my favorite Masters. I love Canada, as I've said before. I can't wait for this tournament to get started. And let me know what you think. Please do leave a comment below, as you always do. And I will always try to reply to as many, if not all, of your comments. Thank you for all the support. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. And if you've enjoyed this video and look forward to, more future content as well, give it a thumbs up. Thank you very much.
Game, set, and match. Game, set, and